And then the next day we played against Michael Jordan, and it was a phenomenal game. But I remember so clearly that they threw an alley-oop to Michael towards the corner. And I'm like, what is this? He's 10 feet away from the basket. He catches the ball, turns in the air, and shoots a corner jump shot that hit nothing but the bottom of the net. And I'm like, what is that? We had people sleeping in all parts of the house on the floors. But we just had such a magnificent time that we can't go without this. The first time that I showed up at his house for Super Bowl weekend, I walked in and I'm looking at the table, and around the room are Mario Lemieux, there's Billy Cunningham, there's
like they were there?
They're sitting at the table. And I'm like, man, I'm like, what's going on? Like, are you kidding me? The whole thing was Hall of Famers. I remember Daryl Dawkins was at a basketball camp in Connecticut. It was the first camp that I went to, and he picked me up in the crowd. And when he picked me up off the floor, I was flying through the air like I was a little dog. And he said, okay, I want you to stand here under the basket. And he proceeded to throw about 15 dunks on my head. Then he turns to the crowd and said, everybody give Harold a round of applause. And I was like, that was really cool. I got dunked on by Daryl Dawkins. And then he took off his sneakers, he signed them, and he handed them to me. I'm like,
what was it like being part of that game?
Yeah, I mean, they called that the perfect game, right?
They did call that the perfect game. We got on and had about an hour and a half of just a little celebration on the first, which was the exact date that we won the championship. And we all told stories about Coach Massimino, that we relived the whole Final Four run, even starting from North Carolina against Kenny Smith and his whole crew, Brad Daugherty.
Welcome to the Apex Lifestyles Podcast. I'm your host, Bob GDMD, and I'm here as always with my co-host,
Dennis V. How are you today, Bob?
I'm fantastic. We had, we've been busy.
It's been real busy around here.
Right? And today, we got a really special guest, Dennis.
Listen, this right here, my childhood is an aspiring basketball player growing up in Mystic, Connecticut. There was only one name, and that name was Harold Pressley. Everybody that played basketball, southeastern Connecticut, knew this guy. He was a legend. He is a legend. I went to St. Bernard's High School, where I ended up going. Harold won the state championships in 1981 and 1982 under one of the most incredible basketball coaches of all time, Coach Paiuka. After, Harold ended up going to Villanova University, and he played in an era in the Big East, which was the best conference in basketball by far. And in 1985, as the underdogs against Georgetown Hoyas with Patrick Ewing, they won the national title in one of the biggest upsets ever. In 1986, Harold went on to be the Big East Defensive Player of the Year, which in a packed conference was amazing. Big East, all Big East team with names such as Mark Jackson, Wayne Washington, Johnny Cycli. In that year, he was the first-round pick of the Sacramento Kings, where he had a playing career. Then he moved on to Spain, played pro ball in Italy, and now we're full circle back doing the podcast. Harold Pressley, welcome to the show.
Welcome, Harold.
That is beautiful. Thank you. There's a name you left off of that. That's Walter Berry, who was the Player of the Year that year, to Sports Illustrated Player of the Year. And I bring that up because he gave me fits. I had a terrible time against him. He would actually tell you that I was the toughest person he ever played against, but every time I looked up, he had 30 points. So I'm not sure if I believe him.
Sure, how tough he was. Harold, bring us back to 1985, because actually right now, we have the national championship getting ready to happen. We don't know who it's going to be yet because we're sitting at the outset of the Final Four right now. But 1985, you're going to play Georgetown. This year is the 40th anniversary of that victory against Georgetown. What was it like being part of that game? And you're in Villanova history.
Yeah, I mean, they called that the perfect game, right? Isn't that what the legend says, right?
They did call that the perfect game. And what's beautiful is the entire 85 group meaning the managers, the coaches, the sports information director, everybody who was a part of that. We got on and had about an hour and a half of just a little celebration on the first, April 1st, which was the exact date that we won the championship. And we all told stories about Coach Massimino, that we relived the whole Final Four run, even starting from North Carolina against Kenny Smith and his whole crew, Brad Doherty. So it was an epic time. It was one of those where we didn't realize what was about to happen. In fact, if you go back a little while before it all started, I overheard a conversation with Massimino and the three seniors, Ed Pickney, Dwayne McClain, and Gary McClain. And I'm the only other person that's in the vicinity to hear the conversation. And Massimino is telling those three guys, "You're seniors." I was only a junior. "You're seniors and you have accomplished nothing here at Villanova. You're going to leave here and nobody's ever going to remember you." And I remember clearly Gary McClain saying, "Coach, we're going to do something so special. Nobody's ever going to forget us here." And that's how it kind of progressed, and then it just led into barely making it into the NCAA tournament. This was the year that they went from, I believe it was 48 teams to 64 teams, or 32 to 64. In any case, it went up to 64 teams, and we just barely made it in because we had a 19-10 record. And 10 losses put us on the bubble. But we lost 5 of those games to the number one team in the country, meaning Georgetown and St. John kept flip-flopping. Every time they flip-flop, we were playing against the number one team. And we were 0 for 5 that year against the number one team in the country. Like I said to you earlier, that I just had fits with Walter Berry. He just had my number, and he just kept scoring on me. So we didn't want to see St. John's in the championship. That's what each and every one of my teammates would tell you, that we were happy to see Georgetown. That year we lost to Georgetown twice. Both times we were up, I believe, with 5 or 6 minutes to go. We were up in the regular season against Georgetown, and we had them beat. Well, we just fell apart. We just had some turnovers. We couldn't make some shots. And we just knew that if we had one more chance at Georgetown, that it would turn out differently.
Well, Harold, it goes back. So 1982, you win a high school championship. And let's talk about the name Rich Paiuka. One of the best coaches in it. What impact did Coach Paiuka have on you as a player, as a person? Because I remember I went to St. Bernard's High School as well, and you'd come in every year, come back to visit, and talk about your experiences with Coach Paiuka and how that helped you propel your career.
Well, how it began was in 8th grade, I decided to just go check out the school. I had a couple of people that went to the local high school, Fitch, and they told me that we don't want you to come to Fitch. And being an 8th grader, junior high in that area went to 9th grade. So I thought, hey, I want to get an extra year in. Why not go 9th through 12th rather than just a 10th, 11th, and 12th? And so I took a visit to St. Bernard's, met Paiuka, and I just really had a great feeling about the school. So I enrolled and obviously jumped in. The first thing Paiuka said was he met with my parents and he says, if you guys, now my parents knew nothing about basketball. I just really started playing basketball. So Paiuka said he's going to be okay if you guys stay out of it. So he's telling my parents, you guys stay out of it. Leave it to me. I will walk him through this. And then he pulled me in his office. He says, there's 3 things I want you to do. I want you to play your butt off on the court, work your tail off each and every day. I want you in the library. I want you to work your tail off in your books and your grades. And finally, I don't want any distraction, no girls, no partying, none of that stuff. You do those, I guarantee you'll have a Division I scholarship. And I trusted him, I believed him, and that just took off. The work was incredible. Paiuka had a way of making it fun, even though we were just dead. He worked us so hard that I remember one practice, we lost a game to Putnam. Yeah, it was Putnam High School, and my freshman year, And the next day, he kept saying, "So you want to lose, huh?" And he told us to get on the line for suicide. And we ran the entire practice. He ran losing out of us. We did not want to lose ever again because of that. But what a great guy, a guidance counselor. He was my guidance counselor. And he still to this day is helping get into college. So that tells you what kind of guy he is and was back when I was at St. Bernard's. There was nothing that ever got by him. I was in love with football. I really wanted to play football before basketball. And when I entered St. Bernard's, the football coach came to me and said, "I'm going to throw one pass to you every game. You catch it in the middle, fall down before anybody gets to you. You will not get hurt. You'll have a great season." And I was like, yes, I could do that. I love football. I love catching. So I walk into Paiuka's office and he says immediately, "Forget about it. It's not going to happen." I'm like, "Coach, what are you talking about? You're not playing football. Forget about it." I'm like, oh, wow. He knew everything that was going on in that school, but just a wonderful guy. I spend as much time as possible with him. I know if you don't know Paiuka, he's been dealing with some issues medically. Some operation had to happen, but he's still got that great Paiuka spirit where he's always upbeat and ready to go. So that's who you're talking about.
Harold, you told me a story that is iconic before we got in the air. I can't. So I asked you, first of all, if you ever played against Michael Jordan. Before you got to that, and I never knew that you were recruited by Dean Smith. Can you bring that story back? This is something else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm a senior in high school, and all the schools are recruiting me. And Paiuka, doing what he does, he narrowed it down to about 15 schools. And Digger Smith and John Thompson and all these guys were coming into the house. Well, Dean Smith and his staff was one of them. And he walks into my home and he gives his pitch, and he finally gets to this place where he says, "Harold, we have a freshman right now, hasn't played a game. This is September of 1981. Yes, he says, "We have a freshman that we think is going to be pretty darn good. So we don't want to over recruit. We want you to play your freshman year wherever you go. So we won't over recruit. If this guy that we believe is going to be pretty good, if he's not what we think he is, we'll be back in March. And if you wait for us, we'll sign you right then and there." How's that sound? Paiuka really wanted me to go to North Carolina. So he says, "Yes, we're going to wait." And so the year goes on. And as you know, uh, that team, that North Carolina team played Georgetown in the 1981-82 championship. And it was Michael Jordan versus Patrick Ewing, the two freshmen at the time. And they both had phenomenal games. Well, as soon as the game was over, I get a call. Called me at my house. "Harold, this is Coach Dean Smith." "Yes, congratulations, Coach. You just won the national championship." "Yes, Harold. Hey, Harold, do you think you know who that freshman is that I'm talking about?" I said, "Oh, Coach, Michael Jordan. You got a good one, Coach. I'm going to choose some other school. Good luck to you guys." That was beautiful. It was really a phenomenal time to just get that call. I mean, he called me right after the championship game. He didn't leave the actual gym from winning the game before he called me. So that was really nice of him. Yeah, great guy.
And then you faced Jordan in college, which is quite a story in itself.
The very next year, Villanova is on schedule to play in Chapel Hill against the North Carolina Tar Heels and Michael Jordan. And I am starting against Michael Jordan as a freshman. The game is, well, in order to get to the game, we had a snowstorm in Philadelphia. So we could not leave Philadelphia. All the flights were canceled. It was such a big storm that we could not leave Philadelphia. So we're getting calls from all these teams around the country. I remember Notre Dame and Digger Phelps called and said, "Don't worry, you guys stay at home. We'll take the game. It's on national television. And Coach Massimino says, hey, guys, we got to talk about this. Right now, we can't get out of Philadelphia. Do you guys want to try something else or you want to pass on this game? No, we don't want to. We're going to play North Carolina. You got to be crazy. What do we have to do? They bust us down to Atlantic City, where we had a private plane. We jumped on a plane. We went down to North Carolina. We couldn't even practice at the gym because we got there so late that we went into the parking lot, shoveled the snow, and had a walk through practice in Chapel Hill. And then the next day we played against Michael Jordan, and it was a phenomenal game. But I remember so clearly that they threw an alley oop to Michael towards the corner. And I'm like, what is this? He's 10 feet away from the basket. He catches the ball, turns in the air, and shoots a corner jump shot that hit nothing but the bottom of the net. And I'm like, what is that? This guy is phenomenal. We ended up winning the game and flying back home and had a phenomenal year. So we were in the top 10 that year with John Pannone leading the crew. With a beautiful, phenomenal. I had probably the worst freshman year of anybody in history, but we really did a great job that year finishing up in the Big East, and we finished up losing. We got kicked out of the tournament to go to the Final Four against Clyde Drexler and Hakeem Olajuwon. How about that one?
That's incredible.
Yeah, yeah.
So at that game, I got to ask you, at that game, when you saw Michael do that maneuver, right, and hit nothing but bottom of the net, did you realize how special he was at that moment, or did you know beforehand? Or
I didn't know beforehand. Obviously, I saw the championship game with Georgetown and North Carolina, so I obviously knew that he was pretty darn good. He hits the game-winning shot, but I didn't see that coming. The athletic ability that he has was just so phenomenal. There was just no sticking with him. Yeah, he jumped out of the gym. I wasn't in awe of him, but I was like, wow. I really appreciated what his abilities. I was like, that was really, I actually said to myself, that was really cool.
yeah, right,
That was special. Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
Harold, what was it like? So you graduate in 1986. What was the draft night when you heard your name?
So I did not go to New York. They didn't have it the same as they have it today. So there was really not an awful lot of guys showing up in New York. Massimino decided to have a draft party in his office. So all of my teammates were around, and we're just sitting there. And I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know that I went to several of the draft workouts. I've only went to two, one in Chicago and well, one of the workouts, I sprained an ankle before I got there, so I couldn't even work out. So I didn't have a clue. I heard things like you're going to be drafted by the Lakers, you'll be drafted by Atlanta, you'll be drafted by Milwaukee. Never had any kind of concept of Sacramento Kings. So I didn't even know that they were in Sacramento. I thought they were still the Kansas City Kings.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there and they call the actual telephone rings and coach hands me the phone. And the lady, her name was Julie Fye, she says, hey, listen, I'm calling from the Sacramento Kings office. We're going to draft you next. So be prepared to do an interview after. I'm like, okay. I looked around to see who was messing with me because I'm like, Sacramento, who's messing with me? Who said it? And sure enough, we listened to the television and it says, and the Sacramento Kings draft Harold Pressley. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This is so awesome. All of my teammates jumped up and they hugged me. And I still have the phone in my hand. And I put the phone back to my ear and they said, okay, we're going to have some reporters talk to you. But the first reporter says, hey, tell us what you know about Sacramento, about the Kings. So first of all, when did they come to Sacramento? I thought they were still in Kansas City. And it was hysterical. They're like, really? My teammates like, really? You have no clue that they
That's
See,
funny.
the thing about me was I didn't watch a lot of basketball. Obviously, the teams that I watched was the Boston Celtics and the New York Knicks. Being from right the middle of both of them in Mystic, Connecticut, you're pretty much an equal distance to both of those
To
locations.
either of them. Yeah, yeah.
But my guy was Julius Erving. So whenever he was on the television, I sat and I watched every game that he played, but I didn't really watch a whole lot more. So I could tell you everybody who was on the Celtics and most of the guys who were on the Knicks, but other than outside of those three teams, I didn't know until Magic Johnson got there. Then I knew the Lakers. But yeah, but it was just one of those. And I'll tell you about my Julius Erving story once I got to Villanova. That is just the most beautiful thing that anybody can ever imagine. Your childhood idol coming and playing with you. But you let me know when you want to get there.
Go. Yeah,
Please go.
Go for it. Yeah. Yeah, you're writing the script for us right now. Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm at my freshman year. We're at preseason workouts, and we after school we just get on the court and we play because we do the morning workouts at 6 a.m. The running, the lifting, and the afternoon we come back and we just play. So we're ready to play, and all of a sudden Julius Erving walks into the gym, and he's dressed ready to play. We're like, what is going on? And he says, all right, guys, can I jump in with you guys? I'm like, what? Yes, are you kidding me? And I ended up guarding him all week long. And I'm like, okay, just don't hurt him. He's getting ready for the NBA season. Play him as hard as you can, but stay away. We don't need any sprained ankles. We don't need anything to go wrong. Just play him and make sure you don't hurt him. That's my thought. And at the end of the week, it's now that was Monday, and he came every day. Thursday, he shows up, and he's in shoes and dress clothes, and I'm like, "What is going on?" Okay. He comes over to me. He says, "Size 14." I said, "Yeah, I wear size 14. About 6'6", 6'7". Yeah, I'm about 6'6", 6'7". He says, "I'll see you tomorrow," and he walks out the gym. So the next day, I'm sitting there in the gym, and he walks in. Julius Erving walks in with two boxes, and I'm like, he says, I really appreciate how hard you played against me. And I was like, wow, here you go. He hands me the two boxes. I open up the boxes. They're filled with all of his Converse stuff, sweatsuits, t-shirts, sneakers. I'm like, are you
That's
kidding me?
fantastic, man.
Dr. J just gave me all of his gear. And I
That's
mean, that's
crazy.
all I wore for the rest of the year. Yeah.
What a story, man. That's
That
cool.
was so beautiful. I told him about that because he comes out to Sacramento for a golf tournament each and every year. And I told him about that a few years back. And he didn't believe me. I'm like, Doc, this is what you did. He said, all right, no, all right, big guy.
He
Big
didn't
guy.
remember.
He didn't remember, but I
Yeah,
remembered. I
of
remembered
course,
that.
right?
I remembered Daryl Dawkins was at a basketball camp in Connecticut. It was the first camp that I went to, and he picked me out the crowd. And when he picked me up off the floor, I was flying through the air like I was a little doll. And he said, okay, I want you to stand here under the basket. And he proceeded to throw about 15 dunks on my head. Then he turns to the crowd and said, everybody give Harold a round of applause. And I was like, that was really cool. I got dunked on by Daryl Dawkins. And then
Yeah,
he
right.
took off his sneakers, he signed them, and he handed it to me. I'm like, oh. And I actually wore those sneakers in a all-state photo. If you look back in it, I believe I was a sophomore that year. I think I was a sophomore. Yes, I was a sophomore that year. And the actual shoes that Daryl gave me, filthy, filthy, but I wore them in that all-state photo.
Very
So that
cool.
after all that, I actually loved going to camps and playing with kids and dunking for kids and just passing out all kinds of. I would bring so much Villanova stuff and I would pass them out and just dunk for the kids and sign everything they had and just had a ball with the kids. That was one of my most favorite things to do was after the season was over, just go and do basketball camps.
So cool. That's very cool. So let's talk about now you're drafted, right? You're in Sacramento playing on the Kings. What was the challenge? What's it like a challenge you had going from college basketball to pro level? And how did you
The
surmount that?
challenge, I had so much confidence coming into Sacramento that I was blowing people out the door. It was an easy transition for me. We had a very older group So when I came here, we had people like the late Junior Bridgman, who just passed away. He was on his last year here in Sacramento. There was a big trade that was made this summer before I actually arrived in Sacramento with Larry Drew and Derek Smith and Mike Woodson. That trade went through. So we had a team that they made the playoff before I got here. But this year there was a big change. We had Otis Thorpe from the Big East from Providence, Joe Klein, and Reggie Theus and LaSalle Thompson. So we had a pretty good crew, but we just could not connect it. Now, the problem that I had to answer your question was Coach told me that although I was playing extremely well in practices and preseason, he told me that he did not play rookies in the regular season. So I sat there. I sat there at the very first game. I just knew he was going to put me in, and I never played in the very opening game. We were on the road. I did not get to play. So the second game, we had the Clippers at home, and I had 17 points and I believe 8 rebounds. And I thought, well, he's got to play me now. Well, he didn't. I went back to the bench and didn't get a sniff of the game for about, I think it was something like 16, 17 games that I sat on the bench thinking, really? I'm really playing well in practice. So there's no denying that I should actually get some run, but he wouldn't play. And that was the toughest part for me, was to mentally get over the fact that I worked hard enough to be in the game, but I didn't get in the game. Yeah. That was
That's gotta be that's gotta be tough, right? I
that
can
was hard.
imagine that.
That
Yeah.
would beat you up mentally because I would look on other teams and I saw guys who were in my year's draft and I'm watching them play on TV. So I'm looking at Ron Harper and I'm looking at Brad Doherty. I'm looking at Dennis Rodman. I'm seeing all these guys playing and I'm thinking, wow, I come to a team with a coach who actually said, I don't play rookies. I'm like, oh, this is a tough place to be. He was let go midway through the season, and I did get to play quite a bit and had a pretty good rest of the way. It turned out to be a fun year. Yeah,
Harold, 1986, the draft ended up being I mean, I'm a lifelong Boston Celtics fan, and that draft
yeah,
goes down in history. Well, first of all, Celtics won the championship that year. Brad Doherty gets drafted. All of a sudden, Celtics draft Len Bias. And
Mm.
very shortly after, Len Bias lost his life.
that
What type of impact did that have on you, and what was circling through the game at the time when Len lost his life?
well, we played Lenny uh, in '85 twice, so we played them at their facility in Maryland, and it didn't go well for me. I had to guard Lenny.
How good was he?
Oh my goodness. You talk about Jordan jumping. He jumped higher than Jordan. He just didn't have the overall game, but his game was really good. He could shoot it, he could drive, he will dunk on you in a heartbeat. He was blocking shot. Somebody just sent me a photo of me trying to contest his shot. And I'm like, wow, I'm way down there. He was truly amazing. So the Celtics had an awesome choice. Now, again, during that season, we barely lost to them at their facility, and I believe we lost because I had a bad game. And so we ended up playing them in the NCAA tournament run, and we're at a neutral site. And I turned around and had a really good game where I just played such defense on him that it frustrated him so much that I was going for a fast break, and he just tried to push me. He tried to push me into the backboard, and so it was just he died during draft night. So after the draft, he went and had a party with his friends, and we all know what happened there. But that one hit most of us in a very difficult way. I played against him again in my senior year before the draft. And we opened up the pavilion at Villanova. After the championship, they started working on a brand new facility to play in. We just so happened to open up our season against Maryland and Lenny Bias at the pavilion at that time, the brand new Villanova pavilion. And I hit the game winner to walk off the court with a win in the first game at the Pavilion, and it was against Len Bias. And again, I just had a so-so night, but the rest of the team just really rallied, and we played such great defense that he was, he was still Lenny. He was still dunking and jumping and phenomenal, but we just eked it out. For him to pass away on draft night, I can't imagine what his parents, what his siblings, what his friends had to go through at that was a tough one because I lost several teammates while I was playing here in Sacramento, and it's a hard thing to bounce back from. So I still to this day wonder how his mother is doing and if she ever got over that. That's a tough one because it was tough for the basketball world. We played against each other so many times. We watched him just develop in his career, and we just knew he was going to be an all-star over and over and over, especially in Boston. I played for Bill Russell. And Bill Russell had just he was just about to make a trade with Boston, and he calls me in the office. He says, Harold, everybody wants you. He says, if I traded you right now to Boston, you'd be an all-star in a year. And I go, really? So are you going to do that? He said, no, I'm stuck in Sacramento. You're stuck here with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a funny guy. I truly enjoyed him. Uh, yeah, another one that passed away. He truly was a fun person to meet. A lot of guys didn't really care for him because we didn't win much, but I loved riding the planes and sitting next to him and hearing the stories because he had some amazing things to say about growing up and Boston. And he really loved Boston, but he had an awful lot of stories to tell about that time that he was growing up. Yeah, basketball has been so much fun and it's been so good to me that I can look back now and say, wow, I've done some incredible things because of basketball. And I know it all started right there in Connecticut, where St. Bernard's High School is Uncasville. And now they have the Mohegan Sun right down the street, and Foxwoods not too far past that. And I was just there. I was just there for Michael Cagle's, my high school teammate's induction into Anna Maria College, and I actually drove to St. Bernard's just to take a photo in front of the St. Bernard's sign and just post that and tell everybody hello that I miss them. Yeah, it's a good time.
That's incredible. Harold, after the NBA, you hopped the pond, you went over to Spain.
Yes.
Talk about your experiences in Spain. Talk about that transition and how that shaped your perspective on basketball and in life.
Yeah, and then we're gonna probably end that up with a championship that you were involved in over there too, right?
Okay, absolutely. Well, and I went 4 years with the Kings, and we finished up with Dick Mata, and Dick and I just didn't hit it off. So he really put me on the bench, and I didn't get much playing time after that. I sprained my ankle twice that year. I was rushed to the hospital. I got clotheslined by a guy named Keys down in Charlotte. So I got injured quite a bit that year. And so I ended up the season, the last 20, 30 games on the bench. He came to the end of the bench and said, do you want to say goodbye to the fans? And I knew it was all over for me in Sacramento at that point. And I said, you know what? I do. I want to play one more game. And it was against my college teammate, Doug West at Villanova. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it to Doug tonight. And my ankle was so bad that I just hobbled around that whole floor. But that ended, and I had a agent that wasn't a basketball agent. He was actually a track agent. His name was Ron Stanko, and he was Ronaldo Miamaya's agent. And after talking to Massimino says, "Hey Harold, what difference does it make? Because you give agent 6%, you give him 3%. You already know where you're going to fall in the rankings. You're the 17th pick, so they already have a salary set for you. So why pay the extra money? Just take Stanko, and that'll be it. You just pay him a little bit of money." It's like, you know what, coach, that sounds great. Well, he didn't know any of the NBA general managers. He didn't have any of the other players to help negotiate. If you get this guy, you're going to get this guy from me. I didn't have that. So when he came to me with the contract over in Spain, it was a 3-year deal and it was double the money that I was making in Sacramento. I said, let me think about it for a night. I got a call from Chicago, from the Chicago Bulls. And they say, hey, Harold, it's between you and 2 other players that's going to play with Michael Jordan this year. And I was like, huh, okay, I got an offer on the table. Can you guys make that decision in the next couple of days? It's no, we can't make that. We can't make that until September. Well, the team in Spain needed me by August, the 1st of August. And I'm like, oh, I got a tougher decision here because they have 2 other guys. It's not like I am guaranteed the spot. So my agent talked me into going over to Spain and taking the guaranteed contract. Uh, and it really worked out because while I was over in Spain, I got back to that winning ways. I got back to working hard. I got back to everything that we weren't doing in Sacramento, but we did at Villanova, the same things that we did for Coach Paiuka and St. Bernard's. I felt like I was back home in that environment. And it was just such a fun year. We ended up winning the Spanish League championship. I played with a guy by the name of Cornelius Thompson who went to UConn. In fact, I'm going to stay with Corny at the end of this month for I can't say it. There's a surprise party coming up, and I don't want to blow that one. But
Yeah.
but I will stay with Corny and reunite with him. But I did have a phenomenal time. 3 years in Barcelona, which is probably one of the top 5 cities to ever play basketball in. We played for Juventud de Badalona, which is right on the borderline of the gym that the '92 Olympic team played in. That was actually my gym that my home stadium. So it was
Did you?
truly. Go ahead.
I was going to ask you, did you end up learning Spanish while you were over there?
I learned enough to order food and to get around and to just to shop and do that stuff, but they kept throwing a microphone in my face and put me on television after the game was over. And I'm like, guys, you're killing me. I'm going to look like an idiot. I don't know enough I didn't know how to translate and how to change the verbs and all that kind of stuff. So I was speaking broken English along with broken Spanish along with English, and it
Yeah,
was a
wow.
mess. It was a mess. I actually ended up doing a radio show over there. Somebody approached me and they said, what do you like? I said, I love music. He says, oh, really? We have a radio station. You want to do an hour show? It's like, you know what? Between practices, I'm sitting home. I'll do it. And I get there and I'm like, he says, just say whatever you want to say. Use as much Spanish as you want. Use English if you want. I don't care. We just want you on the radio. So I did what was called Un Order of Funk with Harold Pressley. 1 hour of funk with Harold
Yeah.
Pressley. It was a weekly show, and I
So
had fun.
you're introducing all the funk acts right over there.
I had no idea what I was doing. I called myself scratching some records, and I had a friend that came one day to the studio with me, and at the end he says, that was awful. But they don't know. Yeah, so I had a blast. I got to play against quite a few players that I played against in college and also in the pros. Another time meeting it up with Walter Berry. He was on a team in Madrid after the game. We gave it to him. We drilled him. I was on the best team in Europe at the time. So we drilled him. And after the game, I go in to see Walter and just say hi. And I walk in, I said, well, I don't understand what's going on, but every time I play against you, I look up and you got 30 points on me. And he says, every time I look up, you have another championship. And I'm like, touche, touche. Okay.
That's
All right, I'll
fantastic.
go with that. So yes, that was the first year winning the championship. Then the second year, they listed me as the best player in Europe, and I was having a fun time. That was actually the best I've ever played in my career, playing against Tony Kukoc, and it was just a phenomenal year. Unfortunately, just before the season got to the playoff, I broke my no, I ripped a muscle in my leg. I tore a muscle in my leg, and I could not participate in the finals and the playoffs. So they replaced me with a guy by the name of Mike Smith, who was a wonderful guy. He jumped just like Michael Jordan and Len Bias. I mean, he jumped that high, but he was only 6'4", and he dunked on in the playoffs. He dunked on Sabonis so viciously that I can't get out of my head. It was just magnificent. We ended up winning that championship as well. The next year was the Olympic year, and they gave me extra time off. They told me, you got an extra month to stay home. Well, unfortunately, I stayed home and enjoyed it. I came back with way too much weight on it, and it
Yeah.
took me most of the year to get the weight off. By the time I got on a roll, again, it was just before the playoffs, and I broke my thumb. And I had to play in the European Championship with a broken thumb. And we ended up losing the European Championship at the buzzer to Croatia. Sasha hit a falling out of bounds three-pointer to beat us by one. And yeah, that was a heartbreaker. But my time in Europe was just phenomenal. My wife, she was my girlfriend at the time. She came over and stayed with me, and we really got close. And that's probably the reason that she and I got married, because we spent that much time together in Spain, and I got her pregnant over there, and had 9 months later had my first son. So it was a beautiful time. I wouldn't change it for the world.
Harold, what's amazing is you talked 92, and there wasn't a lot of players from Europe and other countries coming over and playing in the United States. And that's changed a lot in the NBA since then. And you're mentioning some big players like Sabonis, Petrovic was out there, Kukoc at the time. How many guys back in the day were playing that you were like, God, they'd be doing very well in the NBA? And did you
There
think
was
the NBA was missing out at that time?
There was three on my team that would have played in the NBA if they were really watching them. We had a guy, the star, he was the best player in Europe. His name was Jordi Villacampa, and I had the pleasure of playing with him for 3 years. And he was the Michael Jordan of Spain. Can score on anybody. He was just so fast, not extremely athletic, about 6'5", but athletic enough, but he really knew how to play basketball. His shot was so pure. I watched him. The only time I was ever sick, I could not play in a game, and I turned on the TV and I watched him have 50 points. And I thought, if he doesn't play, I'll have 50. And if I don't play, he'll have 50. But if we both play, we're both going to get about 25 points each. And it was that kind of a team. We had 3 7-footers on the team, in addition to Corny Thompson. So we were stacked. And that, yes, on my team alone, 3 guys would have made the NBA if it was what it is today. They were that good. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Harold, do you know you're the first player in Big East history to record a triple-double?
I did. I did, which is really funny because I didn't know that going into it, and I didn't realize until the game was over, and nobody said anything until I believe we were on the bus, and somebody pulled out the stat sheets and said Presley had a triple double. And the amazing part was I remember it was at Providence, and we were playing against Billy Donovan, and I had to block his shot to save the game and go into overtime. And that's exactly what happened. We went into overtime, and then we won the game in overtime, but I had 19 points, 11 rebounds, and 10 block shots. And that was the first triple-double of the Big East. Now, what people don't know is that a little bit later we played against Georgetown. And after watching the film, I had 33 points. I believe it was 15 rebounds and 12 block shots, but they only gave me credit for 8. And we played at the Plestra, and they didn't count the 4 block shot that I actually had as well. So yeah, that was a great little, wow, that lasted quite a while until I believe Derek Coleman. I think he joined me, and then a couple other guys joined. Josh Hart was probably the later guy from Villanova to pull off a triple double. So that stood for quite a while. And I was quite proud of that because, like I said, I had a tough freshman year, but I had an outstanding senior year. Going from not having the confidence in the freshman year to having all the confidence in the world in the senior year. And what did it for me was that championship game. That championship game just said you're good and you're good as anybody else who just play and relax and enjoy the game and have fun like you did when you were just a little, you know, when you first picked up the ball. And that's what I would tell all the kids. Have fun with it. It's still a game. I know it's played for high stakes, but it's still just a game. And when you make it more than just a game, you lose that enjoyment. Enjoy. And I tell everybody, just enjoy life. Life is too short not to have fun. Laugh. If you laugh and forgive. Laughing and forgiving just makes you feel better. You're going to enjoy your life if you laugh and forgive.
Yeah, that's good advice for everybody, man.
It truly is.
Everybody should. What motivated you to pursue a career in player development after you were done with that being a player?
I didn't. That was a telephone call that came to me. I was
Okay.
so in the community that everybody knew me. If there was a golf tournament, a banquet, a luncheon, just any kind of event, I was at it. So it was an easy call for the Kings to say, "Hey, are you busy? What's going on? Would you consider taking this job?" I was like, well, you know what? It's with the Kings, and that's where my heart was with the NBA. That was the only team that I played for. Sure, let me do that. The problem was my back was so bad. I played in I played in a church league and this ginormous Samoan set a back pick on me that threw my back out. I had to get carried off the court to my car. I don't know how I made it from my car to the bedroom, but I remember laying on the floor in my bedroom and I couldn't move. I couldn't get to the bathroom. So eventually I had to have back surgery. So I had a surgery that cleaned my L5, is it L5 and S1, something like that. S1, I don't know which one. It's down the lower back. In any case, they cleaned it up. It worked for a little while until I decided to move some furniture. Then it went out again. I had to go back in for a second surgery, and the second surgery didn't work, so that I had to go back. And in 2008, I couldn't bear it anymore, and I was working for the Kings at the time in player development. And I just went in and said, I gotta go. I can't do this anymore. And that was it. That was the last time I was the player development. I did coach with Massimino at Cleveland State before that, from I believe it was 96, 97, 98 season. And then I told Massimino that I would be with him until we turned things around. When we got there, they won one game. I said, I will not walk away until you are no longer have a losing program. And so I believe that third year we finished up 15-15. I said, Coach, it's not a losing program. I got to go back to Sacramento. And we cried. We both cried. And he just started coming out to do all I started a foundation back in 95, and it was for a group home for 6 children and just to house them and treat them really well. So I started doing presents for the kids, started doing fundraisers, and Massimino would come out every year and be my auctioneer. And he would guilt people into spending $2,500, $3,500 on a jersey, autograph jersey. I mean, he was shaming me. You have money. I know you're a car dealer. Pull out your wallet. It's only
Yeah.
going to cost you $5,000. And they would do it. They would pull out and write a check or give the credit card. I'm like, Coach, you're amazing. It was so I was just in the community so much that, and I still am. I'm actually the community liaison for a Highlands Community Charter and Technical School. It's an adult-only school here in Sacramento. You have to be 22 and of age and older. Our average age is 40 years old. 75% of our students are immigrants learning the language, but they're all working on getting their actual high school diploma. So we graduate over 300 students every 6 months. We now have about 8,000 students in our school. And it's a fun thing to run around the community, the region, and tell everybody that I'm helping adults get their high school diploma. It's really a good
That
feeling.
is
Next level. That's
That's
great.
incredible, Harold. Harold, what do you hope your legacy that you want to leave in the world in both basketball and beyond?
When we talk about the people that really shaped me, I look at my parents, my mom, my dad, my stepdad, Russell, Margaret Ann, Frank Presley, and Russell Means. It started there. And then it was turned over to Rich Paiuka and then finally Rolly Massimino. And the one thing that they all had in common was that they loved people. They enjoyed being around people and they knew how to treat people. My mom worked at the commissary at the sub base in Groton, and she was in the produce department. And what she would do for everybody, it didn't matter who it was, everybody got a gift basket, a fruit basket, completely filled with a beautiful saran wrap around it, and they got a basket for their birthday. And I just saw my parents and my coaches just give. Massimino, the last thing I saw him do was I'm down in Florida with him. I spent the weekend with him, and he drove me to the airport and walked me in. And one of the bell captains comes running up and said, Rolly, I've been trying to get my daughter into your school. He was at the little NAIA school down in Florida. So I was trying to get my daughter into your school for the last 2 years. I can't get her in your school. He says, just come by on Monday. We'll have her enrolled. Well, I came back several months later, and the guy runs up to me and says, your coach got my daughter in that very Monday. And I was like, that's the kind of people. I just watched Coach Paiuka at Michael's induction at Anna Maria. Coach Paiuka is placing kids, girls, into to the basketball player. He says, I got a girl for you. I know she's outstanding. She's got great grades, and I'm going to fill you guys up with some basketball players. So they just give. They just love and they just give. And that's, I would hope that people would say the same thing about me. He loves, and he was always willing to give himself his time, and he loved people.
Unbelievable. Dennis.
Harold, you know what? Growing up, like I said, everybody wanted to be Harold Pressley in the area. I mean, you have lived a life, professional basketball, but the thing that really rings true is you're an absolutely exceptional human being, which just comes out. I don't remember, my mother worked with your mother at the base as well, and my mother merchandised there. And when I was in high school, I was really sick. And I remember every couple weeks, you were shooting me cards out to Hartford Hospital, and it was an inspiration. And I remember things like that. I remember going to my first basketball camp at Slamma Jamma, and you were drafted. You run around the gym with your Sacramento Kings shirt on, and those were highlights for all of us. And you have touched so many lives, and you're continuing to do it with adults. I've been in education for years, and you're giving back, and it's amazing. It's a pleasure to have you on here, and great to see you doing amazing things.
That is beautiful. Slamma Jamma. That
Slamma
really took
Jamma.
off. That took off. That was a great name. I tried to use it a couple of times out here in Sacramento. What an awesome name. And yes, Paiuka did a wonderful job at camps and all the guys that he had with him. I remember them so clearly. And I remember Artie. It was Art. What's his name?
Oh,
Oh my
with his
God.
Southern Connecticut coach,
Yes.
Art Leary.
Art
Coach
Leary.
Leary.
Art Leary. Art Leary says to me one day after camp, he says, Harold, yeah, you're going to do some nice things on the basketball court. He says, but I'm going to look forward to what you do off the basketball court. He says, I think you're going to do so much more off the court. And that really stuck with me. Like, what? No. My first thought was, no, I got to play for 18 years in the NBA. And little did I know that I really appreciate at the age that I am to look back and hear those words from Art Lamro. Not Art Lamro. Art Lamro was at St. Bernard's. Say it again. What was his name?
Art Leary.
Art Leary. Art Leary. Yes, that was Coach Paiuka's one of his dear friends. Yeah, he was such a great guy. Guys, I really appreciate this. I'll give you one more before we go, okay? Because we were talking about
you
85.
give us. Hey, Harold, can I
We'll stay on all night if you want.
Harold, I'm going to stop you 1 second at Slamma Jamma. You mentioned Doug West. I was a camper. Look at the screen.
Really? Let me put the glasses on. Awesome.
That's a young Dennis Van Essen between Harold Pressley and Doug West at Slamma Jamma basketball camp. I
It's
would like to say
awesome.
that's 1988.
It has to be. He was at Villanova. I had just did the camp at Villanova, and I brought, instead of me dunking, I brought out Doug West and a couple
He
of
had some
other guys from
hops.
Villanova, and they were jumping all over the place. Gary Massey, those two had competition to see who could jump the highest, and they would just dunk. I mean, the dunks that they did, I was like, wow. And I
Oh, yeah.
said, Doug, what do you have to do? You busy? He said, no. I said, do you want to make some money? He said, yeah, of course. I said, well, we're going to drive to all these camps, and whatever they pay me, I'm going to give to you. Would that work? It's like, yeah, that'd work. I had my MBA money, so I was like, let's take care of you. And so, but I'm going to make you dunk wherever we go. You're going to dunk. You're going to put on a show. And he said, yeah, I could do that. So Coach Paiuka was like, Harold, I will give you a check. No, Coach, you can't give me a check. I can't take your money. But Doug can. The Doug can. So he would pay Doug. Doug was, my God, the first time I ever saw it, tap your ankle and then spin around. I was like, what the heck is that? Yeah, it was a lot of fun going from camp to camp. I started at Villanova, and then I finished. I did the camps in New York and all of Connecticut, but I finished up at Dartmouth University for Paul Cormier, who was the guy who actually recruited me out of Villanova. Yeah,
That's
fun time.
incredible.
Yeah, and you have the picture. Yeah,
It's amazing. It's
I
amazing.
I need a copy of that. I'm going to send it to Doug.
Harold, I got some other ones with Worcester's own in the area, Dwayne McLean. And
Awesome.
I'm gonna pop one more up for you right now. This'll remember this guy? That's when you introduced me to Raleigh Massimino.
Where was that?
That was at I think Groton Motor Inn when you were inducted into the St. Bernard's Hall of Fame.
I remember that night. Dwayne also showed up there that
Yes,
night.
he did.
And
Listen, Harold, I came prepared.
that
Look at
is
this.
too funny. That is
Yeah, I pulled those
awesome.
up the other day. I knew you're coming on. I'm like, this is good stuff. I'll send you some copies of them.
Snowstorm that night.
Yes, there
So
was.
Dwayne brought his mom and a girl that he met. So on the way back, they ran out of gas. They were driving back to Worcester. They ran out of gas, and Dwayne's girlfriend got into the driver's seat while Mrs. McLean and Dwayne, Mrs. McLean was in her high heels, are pushing the car to the nearest gas station
Man,
in a snowstorm.
can't make it up.
Crazy stuff. Crazy.
Yeah.
All right. All right. You want to go back to Patrick Ewing? Is it
We
time?
have to go to this story. Absolutely.
So my junior year puts it together because he's very close friends with Patrick's high school coach. So Patrick's a senior, and they decided to bring his what it was called Ridge and Latin School. Well, how do you say
Cambridge,
that?
Cambridge.
Cambridge Ridge and Latin. They came down to our high school at St. Bernard's in Uncasville to do a scrimmage. So my mom, when we tell her what's going to happen, she says, because we just saw Patrick signing with Georgetown. He's doing all these great things. My mom says, I'm going to make him a bag of chicken for the bus ride home. And well, okay, I think he'll appreciate that. And so after the game's over, I walk over to Patrick and I hand him a bag. He says, what's this? My mom made you this chicken and you can share it with everybody. He said, oh no. He said, no, I'm going to eat this one. And ever since that day, all I kept hearing from Patrick was, tell your mom's hi. And that was the best chicken I've ever had. Now, with that said, my senior year, John Thompson came to my home, and obviously he was pushing Patrick Ewing and all the stars that they had at Georgetown. So I took a visit to Georgetown, and Patrick Ewing was my host. So I stayed in a room with Patrick, and he showed me the classes and showed me the campus, and I had a really great time with him. And he said, after I chose Villanova, he said, I can't believe that you chose Villanova after the time we spent, because we had such a wonderful time at Georgetown. So my dad really wanted me to go to Georgetown. My mom, for some strange reason, wanted me to go to Holy Cross. And I'm like, Mom, that's not going to happen. But it's a beautiful school. It's just not going to happen, Mom. I'm going to go somewhere where it's in the Big East. The whole school wanted me to go to Notre Dame because it was a Catholic school, and with the football and blah Bono, the assistant coach, he was in love with Notre Dame. So, but there was that Massimino factor, and what he did, the way he really got me was he said, Harold, this is not a, he showed me all this stuff. He had me going to school. He had me graduating. He turned a page and it was a beautiful presentation. But he closed all that down. He says, this is not a 4-year commitment between you and I. He said, I'm going to be with you for the next 40 years, or at least until I die. He got me right there. That's when I was like, all right, Villanova it is. Yeah, but I really had a beautiful time of the recruitment process, the people that were coming into our home. The neighbors just loved because they were all waiting outside with cameras to take pictures of Dean Smith, of Digger Phelps, of John Thompson, and the list just kept going. UCLA came out, South Carolina, and the recruiting was more for the community than it was for me because they went nuts. They were just watching out the whole time, looking out the window to see who was coming out the car next. And it was a who's who of recruitment. So I really did. I had such a basketball career from start to finish. Paiuka high school coach was so amazing. He knew enough that to say, we got to get these guys some exposure. So we played in front of the Boston Celtics. We played we're in between the Celtics locker room and the 76ers locker room. And when we walk out of
Wow.
our locker room, you see Larry Bird coming from one way, you see Dr. J coming from the other way. We're like, what the heck? This is
Imagine.
so cool. We played in front of the Washington, D.C. We went down there and played before, at that time, it was the Washington Bullets. So he did a wonderful job of just exposing us to the world and the world of basketball. So I had a phenomenal, phenomenal time. And being drafted in Sacramento is where I met my wife. And that's where we live now with beautiful children. Now I actually have 3 granddaughters that
Wow.
they have my heart. It's hard for me to go anywhere without seeing them. So it's a beautiful life that I had. I've been completely blessed.
Harold, my favorite question. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Wow. I would, you know what? I know this one. This is an easy one. If I had to start all over, I would have been in the weight room. I didn't believe in it. I thought it would hurt my shot. I just did not spend the time working on my body. I was in such tremendous shape and, able to run and jump. I could run for days, enjoyed running so much that I would just go in the woods and just run for hours. And so I didn't think that I needed anything else. I was in tip top shape. Why do I need to lift weights? I would have got into that weight room and just strengthened every muscle in my body. And I think that would have prevented the breaks and the tears and all the things that prevented me from playing longer. Because as a basketball player, the one thing you want to do is play. You don't want to coach. At least I didn't want to coach. I wanted to play, and I wanted to play 40 minutes a game in college. I wanted to play the 32 minutes a game in high school. I wanted to play the 48 minutes in the NBA and 40 minutes. I wanted to play all game long. And your body just can't handle that unless you are in that weight room. And that's the one thing that Michael Jordan really understood, that he would actually lift weights before the game. And he would lift weights the day after the game. If I could have done it all over again, I would have done that. And the other piece was to do what Rich Paiuka said. Stay away from the parties and the women. That would have helped.
Yeah.
That would have helped.
Some distractions there for sure, right?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Yeah, but you live and you learn, I guess. And as we get older, we see that in a much better view.
Yeah, yeah. Now I get in bed by 9:30.
Yeah. I think I got you beat. I'm usually about 8 p.m.,
Well, I fall asleep at 7:30 on the couch, and then I get
Right.
in
So
bed at 9:30.
it's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, Dennis, let me just say that what an incredible guest.
Phenomenal.
Phenomenal. Like Harold, thank you so much for coming, man.
Oh, this is beautiful. This is wonderful. This week is such a important week. As I said, the entire 85 group, we text each other each and every day. It's a shame.
Wow, that's cool.
Some of the things that come through it is like, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
And
right.
why are you
It's a
talking
bunch
about
of
that?
guys, right? I mean,
Oh, guys, oh, guys. But it's every day, and it's been every day uh, ever since we started getting back together with Massimino. And we started getting back to with Massimino, I believe that was in the early 2000s. So we went every year for the Super Bowl. The 85 team would show up at Massimino's house and we would spend the Super Bowl weekend with him. And his wife and his daughters would just cook and make us so comfortable. We had people sleeping in all parts of the house on the floors, but we just had such a magnificent time that we can't go without this. The first time that I showed up at his house for Super Bowl weekend, I walked in and I'm looking at the table, and around the room are Mario Lemieux. There's Billy Cunningham. There's
like they were there.
they're sitting at the table. I'm like,
Man,
what's going on? Like, are you kidding me? The whole thing was Hall of Famers, and they're just drinking, having fun. And come on, Harold, get a glass of wine. I'm like, do you guys know who
wow.
you are?
Yeah,
That's
right.
yeah.
It's incredible. I'm like, Mario Lemieux? What the heck? I live in the neighborhood. What?
Legends. Wow.
Legend. Nothing but legends. I can't even stop there now. Now I got to go back to Bill Russell. And I'll end it here, I promise, okay? So I'm coaching with Massimino in Cleveland, and the All-Star game, the NBA All-Star game, is in Cleveland that weekend. And Massimino gets a call from, gosh, I just went blank on his name. Coached that with the Detroit when they won the championship, and he coached the first Olympic team. Help me,
Chuck Daly.
Chuck Daly. So Chuck, by the way, Chuck Daly was at his home that day as well. But Chuck Daly
Wow.
called him and said, "You got to meet us down. We're having a dinner downtown at this hotel. Just show up." And Massimino says, "Harold, you want to go?" I said, "Man, yeah, I want to go. Where you going?" He says, "Just come on." He didn't tell me what was going on. And I walk in the room, and it's the same thing. There's Dr. J, there's Moses Malone, there's Bill Russell. The table is filled with nothing but Hall of Famers. And I'm like, my God. Bill Russell looks and he sees me and he sees Massimino and he screams, "The genius! The genius! Everybody, this is the genius!" And Massimino says, "Bill, why you call me a genius?" He said, "I coached Presley and Pickney at the same time, and for you to win a national championship with Presley and Pickney, you had to be a genius." The whole place fell out. Yeah, that was one
That's
of the all-timers.
Best champion of all time.
Man, he was
7
phenomenal.
championship rings.
He
Just
was
all
phenomenal.
no,
I asked him one day on our trip because a couple of people came up and asked him for an autograph. And I said, "Bill," we get on the plane. I said, "Bill, why don't you just give him an autograph?" He said, "Harold, and wouldn't it be much more enjoyable and memorable if we just sat down and talked? I would sit here and talk to you for a half hour, for an hour if you wanted to talk. But what is an autograph going to do for you when I can tell you stories and you can have a personal time with me?" I thought, all right, that makes sense. But I still want an autograph too.
yeah.
So
Right.
he used to sign our checks. That's the only autograph I ever got from him. Yeah,
That's
That's
awesome.
yeah,
fantastic. Wow.
yeah.
This is for the record books right here.
Yeah, this what a great episode, Harold. You're truly one of the best and great person all around. First time I'm getting to meet you, and you definitely have an infectious energy to you. And thank you so much for coming on. And I
Well,
got no worries. This has been a great conversation. I loved every minute of it.
I'm sure we'll be back on next year because I made promises to everybody at Anna Maria that I would come back for a girls' game, basketball game, and to see my buddy Michael Cagle. And I have a friend who lives in Athol,
Yeah.
Massachusetts. So I have to come back, and I promised that I would. So if you guys will have me again, we can do
We'll
something
have you
live.
in the We'll
Yeah,
have
well-
you in the studio.
Yeah,
That'd be
we'll do it
incredible.
live. That'd be
All
great.
right, that works.
Yeah, it's a
that
different
works.
vibe than the remote too. Even you know,
That works. That is beautiful. Yeah, I
fantastic.
miss it. I actually did. We just finished we had a year of TV. So we did a show called the Highlands Sports Roundtable, and we did it for a full year every week. There was four of us on set, which included, if you guys remember, Franklin Edwards, who went to Cleveland State University and they played for the 76ers, won a championship with them, played with me here in Sacramento, played for the Los Angeles Clippers. So he was part of our set. And we had the announcer for the Kings and John Cassidy, who was the CEO of the credit union, the local credit union here in the region. And we did a sports talk show for one full year, and it was about everything. Yeah, like I said, I love football. I was comfortable in the football field and the basketball field. I had no idea what was going on in tennis or in baseball, but I faked it pretty well.
Yeah, you know, if you know sports, right, in general, like you can get along just fine.
You get through it, yeah. But
Yeah.
we actually at one point years ago when we were doing it, we had quite a few guests, and we had Serena Williams come on, and that was really cool. I don't know how I knew her. I knew somebody who grew up with them, and he was opening up a dental facility here in town. And I said, hold it, she's going to be here? I need to get an interview. And she was the sweetest person ever. Yeah, some celebrities ruin it, but most of these athletes, they have great personalities. They're just sweet people, and they want to be around people. And unfortunately, you get those few that may act out and mess it up. But for the most part, you run into the best people in the world. All athletes love being on a team. They love being around people. So I just fit in with the rest of them. Just love. All right, guys.
Thank you so
Thank you
much
so
for your
much.
time.
Dennis.
Guys, enjoy.
It's go time.